President. I inform the chamber that Senator Storer will also sponsor this bill. The short title is the Animal Export Legislation Amendment Ending Long-Haul Live Sheep Exports Bill 2018. I ask that General Business Notice of Motion number 821, standing in my name and the names of Senators Rhiannon and Senator Storer, propose the introduction of a bill be taken as formal.
Being no objection, Senator Hinch.
Mr President, I move that the following bill be introduced: a bill for an act to amend the law relating to the long-haul export of live sheep and for related purposes.
That question agreed to?
No. I present the bill and move that this bill may proceed without formalities and be now read a first time.
The question is that the bill now be read the first time. Those of that opinion say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clerk.
A bill for an act to amend the law relating to long-haul export of live sheep and for related purposes.
Senator Hinch.
I move that this bill be now read a second time, and I seek leave to table an explanatory memorandum relating to the bill.
Is leave granted? Leave being granted?
And I table an explanatory memorandum.
Now, Senator Hinch, you may start the debate.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. As an intro to this now sadly repetitive debate about a cruel, barbaric practice, which I promise you will end very soon, and on that, Hinch's hunch has never been so confident. As an intro to this debate, I have to go back to my record-breaking first speech, or maiden speech, delivered in September 2016. Now, I know I spoke for 47 minutes, but I should have bruised your ears for only 20, and I belatedly apologise for my unprecedented verbosity. But I mention it today because I've been accused by some Labor critics back then of using my first speech to jump on the live export bandwagon because, and I quote, "some of us have been campaigning on this since 2012. In my first speech, I said, as for jumping on the live export bandwagon, I brought my first petition to Canberra urging the federal government to ban live exports in 1981. I handed it in the Rose Garden to the then Primary Industry Minister Peter Nixon. It was a petition with 30,000 names on it. 30,000 names, and that was well before social media and Twitter and Facebook campaigns. And now, millions of Australians support a ban on live exports. Back then, we were protesting against the live exports of horses to Japan and live sheep to the Middle East, and that was 37 years ago. It was prompted by a maritime disaster off Fremantle, when more than 40,000 sheep took up to 4 days to die in a fire aboard an overloaded multi-deck carrier which had been abandoned by the crew. It was around the same time that some of us were protesting against cruelty to circus animals. Not a lot of us. I think that at Burnley Oval in Melbourne on a cold winter's night, it was me, Linda Stoner and a couple of others and a dog. Because, see, bloody animal lovers were all nut jobs, remember, back then? More recently, I also supported New South Wales Premier Mike Baird's decision to ban greyhound racing from 2017. And I said I hoped that eventually it would have a domino effect and lead to a phased-in ban in all states of Australia. They'd had decades to clean up this corrupt, cruel sport, and they did not, would not or could not do it. Of course, Baird caved to National Party pressure and then he quit his job. But a greyhound racing ban, I believe, will eventually come in. As Gough Whitlam once told me about the Republic, it's not revolutionary, dear boy, it's evolutionary. But back to my first speech. Unlike Senator Hanson's first speech, when all the Greens ostentatiously walked out in protest, making sure they avoided the first exit door and trooped out behind her camera, for the record, only one senator walked out on mine, and that was the Nationals' braces-clad Senator Barry O'Sullivan, when I started talking about banning live exports. At a recent Estimates Committee hearing where he was the chair, I reminded Senator O'Sullivan about this, and he said, and I quote, "I walked out because I had to stand my ground." I did gently point out that by walking out, he actually hadn't stood his ground, but maybe it was a touch subtle. Anyway, this bill to ban the export to the Middle East of live sheep, as Kiwi actress Rachel Hunter would say, it won't happen overnight, but it will happen. And that's the truth, it will happen. The Lynn Whites and the Linda Stoners of their passionate and compassionate world, they will win. Now, even if the Libs hadn't blinked in the other place last month and pulled their supposedly urgent and important legislation about increased penalties, the writing was then on the wall. And as I said on PM Live on Sky News, the Agriculture Minister, who remember had beaten his chest in protest and said the cruelty to sheep en route to the Middle East during the northern summer, he said, and I quote, was bullshit. And that Minister, David Littleproud, had very little to be proud of. Now, I am pragmatic. I know in hindsight, the Gillard Labor government's decision to instantly ban live cattle exports to Indonesia after that savage, damning Four Corners report, I'll concede it was wrong. Knee-jerk reactions to any situation are usually not wise. And in fact, back then on Melbourne radio, on 3AW, I said to Lynn White and her cohorts, don't pop the champagne corks just yet, this ban will not last. And it didn't. I think it held for 4 or 6 weeks. And looking back here, if we're all being really honest, the instant ban was wrong. It hurt many farmers. It hurt them financially. It hurt them emotionally. And it probably also inadvertently caused some animal cruelty to stranded, superfluous cattle. And that is why this time we are being more practical. We must have a phase-out period. The Greens wanted 2 years. I wanted 3. I've talked to Labor's Joel Fitzgibbon, a passionate Labor shadow minister who wants this evil trade ended as well and has bravely, I believe, been streets ahead of his own party leader. So I say thank you, Joel. And thanks to Craig Emerson, the former Labor minister who feels so strongly about this issue, it has led him to break down in tears on TV, and that vulnerability has seen him mocked on Sky News. So let me be blunt here. The live sheep trade is putrid. There are crap arguments being put up all the time. For example, we need it for halal killing. Well, halal killing has been going on here in Australia, I'm told, for about the past 40 years. Okay, there's no refrigeration in the Middle East. Bull dust. Check out their supermarkets. And the other one, if we don't do it this way, other countries will. Well, let them. I don't intend to make my standards of decency, morality, anti-cruelty be dictated to by some other country's traditions or lack of decency, morality and anti-cruelty. I mean, what? If we're not cruel jerks, somebody else will be? WTF. Anyway, in conclusion, I truly believe this is the last time that thousands of stressed sheep will leave Australian shores on what have become maritime ovens to die agonising deaths, cooked alive. We couldn't have stopped it this year anyway, despite the Animals Australia court case, which I shall stay out of. We couldn't have stopped it because even if Susan Lee's bill had been introduced into the other place, it would have failed with the dual citizenship dissolution of Labor supporters. And even if it had passed, it could not have been achieved, would not have achieved royal assent until near the end of the northern summer anyway. But as I've said, as I have pledged, this is the last summer these ships of shame will set sail. That is my pledge. I've been campaigning in Australia and the United States on this issue for nearly 40 years. And I now say, with full confidence, victory finally will be ours. Thank you.